Hey, y'all, welcome back to Mountain Murders Midweek.
I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
Or on today's episode, my name is Moonbeam.
Oh, yes. Oh, gosh, I didn't come up with a hippie name. What would my name be? Dirty Foot?
Sure.
Oh, yeah, I'm Dylan Dirtyfoot. Okay.
So you're Dirty Feet. I'm Moonbeam. Let's make this happen.
That reminds me of my hobo days.
It's the
right?
age of Aquarius, Dylan.
Yes, here we are on the midweek. We thought we'd take this opportunity to set the stage for where Mr. Manson is going next.
Yeah, we have part 2 of Charles Manson popping in your ears this weekend.
I must say, I enjoyed talking about Manson.
You did?
Yeah, because, I mean, just listening to the way you put things together, I carry on all the time, but you have a unique style. It's all your own. And in preparation for this, I listened to some other things. Okay, I'll listen to this podcast about Manson or this or whatever. And you know what? You still hold the torch. Your backstory, your details, you're really bringing things together from the very beginning of all the characters. Nobody does it like you.
Thank you. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback. I wasn't sure how well Manson would be received on Mountain Murders because it is a little different from what we typically talk about. And a large majority of the story does take place in California, so we're on the opposite coast. But so far, so good, Dylan.
That's okay. Charlie started out in West Virginia.
In Kentucky, West Virginia, Ohio,
Yup.
Appalachia's Charles Manson.
We're going to claim him from now on.
I don't know if we want to claim him, right?
Well.
Okay, so we were going to give you a little background of what was happening in San Francisco, the summer of love, when Manson arrives. We're going to talk about some true crime, criminal cases that happened in the area, and Dylan has some fascinating information and conspiracy theories to share with us.
It's not even a conspiracy theory. There's just too much evidence that points out parts of this that it's basically the record, the historical record. This is blowing my mind. My mind's swimming. I'm going to try to be concise and straightforward. I even have some official notes.
It's okay. They're accustomed to neither one of us being concise. Okay?
It's our style.
Our brains are all over the place. Okay?
Oh, yes.
It's amazing that we have enough attention to sit down and actually record an episode and get through it. So
It really is. It truly is. It's fascinating. So yeah, you want to start it off there, Heather? Let us know where we're going.
Right. So Haight-Ashbury is a neighborhood in San Francisco. It's been there for quite a while, but it became well known during the 1960s when it was home to the hippie movement. At the time, it was where the hippies would go, something called the Summer of Love, which happened in 1967. And Dylan, you have a little bit of history about the gathering.
Oh, yes, I do. Yes, I do. But before we get to that, I just want to point out this, and I think this really kind of sets the stage, true Heather style, of all the things that were going on leading up to the Summer of Love.
There was a lot happening.
Because, I mean, you got to think, like, why in the world would tens of thousands of youths drop out of college, get on summer break, quit jobs, tell their parents to go, suck it, and go congregate in San Francisco, which is basically what they did. And so, you had so much stuff going on. Kind of reminds me of nowadays, but we're so sedated, we don't have any
There was
movements.
a lot of civil unrest.
Yes, there was.
We were battling for civil rights in this country. The second wave feminist movement was happening. And the major event, the Vietnam War.
Yeah, you just really decimated my first paragraph. I'm just kidding. Yes, like you said, you had the civil rights movement from 1954 through 68. So a little 14 years. Big deal, right?
You had the assassination of John F. Kennedy and then later his brother Robert, which was very shocking for people.
Yeah.
Citizens were not accustomed to that, especially having these things televised for the first time.
It's true. Yeah, you had a sitting I didn't even look it up. I thought about it, but when was the last time a sitting president was assassinated? And I think it may go all the way back to Lincoln. I'm not sure. You know, you had other presidents die, health issues, stuff like that.
Garfield was assassinated after he was in office. Did you know that?
Okay, there you go.
I only recently learned about that.
So it had been quite a long time. And then on TV, you have a sitting president killed on November 22nd, 1963. Like you said, the Vietnam War, America's part of that took place in 1961 through 75. Accompanying that is a draft from 1964 to 73. 2.2 million people, men at the time, were drafted out of a pool of 27 million. So it was very likely either you were dodging the draft or knew someone had been drafted, or, you know, I mean, very likely the draft touched you on a personal level. You knew someone, your name came up.
It impacted an entire generation.
Yeah, and this was a meat grinder war.
My grandma, I mean, she's always kind of made this inappropriate joke, but maybe there's some truth to it. She would always say the reason she remained single for, you know, after her like second divorce, the reason she remained single for, you know, 30 years plus, probably more than 40 years at this point. But when I was growing up, she'd be like, I've been single for 30 years. And she would jokingly say, because all the men from my generation went to Vietnam and were killed, or they came home and, you know, of course they called it shell shock back then.
Yeah, they had PTSD.
And she would say, you know, it's pretty slim pickings out there. And like, we kind of joke about that. And of course, like I said, that's a little bit of a tasteless joke because it did impact so many. But she has a bit of a point, you know? I mean, it wiped out a chunk of this group of young men.
Yeah, we lost over 58,000 soldiers there from America's side. And that's a lot. I mean, that is a lot. The war carried on for, 12 years? Yeah, 13, 14 years.
Too long.
Well, I mean, if you look at World War II, it was like a window
4
of
years.
3 or 4 years.
4 years.
Korean,
the Civil War, 4 years.
Korean War, a couple of years. Our involvement there.
It was like 2 or 3.
Yeah, so, you have all this stuff, and you have women, the second wave feminism coming through, women fighting for equal pay, domestic violence, you know, bringing up attention to domestic violence. Many of the things they're still fighting against.
Demands for birth control.
Yeah, many of the things they're still fighting for today and actually losing rights as we speak, which is really weird. And I found this interesting. In the Civil Rights Act, Title VII, which guarantees you cannot discriminate against sex, religion, creed. Anyway, they added gender.
Right. Yeah, you were telling me about this.
They added gender onto it,
Dylan.
and this is how women actually gained some rights from that bill. A Virginia congressman suggested adding gender, which would be for women, to prevent passage of the bill, because in his mind, male voters would be more inclined to say, well, okay, you know, maybe we shouldn't beat and enslave black people, you know, after all this stuff that's happened. But they would balk at the possibility of women gaining more rights. And he thought that would actually kill the bill and stop it from being passed. I mean, is that not a disgusting mindset? I mean,
fucked up.
That just shows you, and the bill did get passed, thank God, for everyone's sake, but that just shows you the mindset during this time, right?
Second-class citizens.
Oh, my God. Yeah, and so all this stuff's going on.
And at this point, you know, our parents have had more rights than we currently do now, or than my daughter has. They're walking them back so much. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Oh, they are. I mean, well, post 9/11, we gave up a lot of privacy rights, and I mean, don't even get me started. But so you have all this stuff swirling around for 10 or 15 years leading up to the Summer of Love, right? And
right. Yeah. You've got mass protests, students, you know, doing walkouts, protesting, marches, just gathering in mass in D.C. You know, makes me think of Forrest Gump. Remember the scene on the mall where everyone's gathered protesting the war? I mean, it was everywhere.
And people might be like, look, this isn't a history podcast. You know, what the hell are you guys talking about? But you have to look at this because on the tail end of all this, there's a reason for what some believe for what happened, the way it happened, and that's with the Manson family.
Well, everything we talk about is history, Dylan,
Well, that's true. That's a good point.
right?
Yeah, so you have all this going on leading into the Summer of Love, 1967. And actually, on January 16th, they had the Human Being Gathering in San Francisco, which was held after recent laws had
The
banned.
human being or the human bean gathering?
It's
It was humans and beans joining together.
Human Bein, Bein.
Okay.
Yeah,
The human being. Okay.
yeah. Sorry.
I'm
Yeah.
just curious. I was wondering if you had to string those humans because
Oh, the human
ne-
beings.
would never work for Dylan.
Okay. Recent laws had been passed to outlaw the use of LSD, which I did not realize was legal up to that point. Wow, hey. And they had beatniks, Allen Ginsberg, Timothy Leary as some of the speakers, as well as many others. And instead of listing all the artists that played, I just put badass music because you're talking Janis Joplin, The Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane, among some other bands that actually lived in the area famously. And so this was a big event. It drew literally tens of thousands of people to a park, the Golden Gate Park, I think it was. And the media attention caused, basically advertised this movement, this what's going on here across all of America. And so you have tens of thousands of American youths descending upon the area, which is only a 0.3 square mile area, a mere 5 block square, the Haight-Ashbury area. And so that's a lot of people, right?
Right. So the Haight was known for being the home to these revolutionary movements, spiritual groups, and famous musicians, making it a hotbed of not only activity, but creativity, right? You had artists like John Lennon and Yoko Ono flocking from all over the world to the Haight-Ashbury district to experience life as it was being lived there. You had Anton LaVey
Yeah.
buying a house, painting it black in this area, the Church of Satan, right? You had all these gurus, people practicing these Eastern religions.
I'm sure Krishnas could be found there in that area, right?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it was just a hotbed, right? You had folks like the Grateful Dead, Janis Joplin. I mean, these musicians, Jimi Hendrix, in this area playing clubs like the Fillmore, world famous, huge auditorium. The Doors. I mean, they're just packing it in there, and I mean, it was a sight for sure. It helped push the boundaries of the hippie movement that came out of there and made history. I mean, some of this history can still be seen today. There's a theater there, Dylan. It's a volunteer-run co-op theater called the Red Vic that showcases independent and local filmmakers existing in the Haight today. Tons of coffee shops, bookstores, thrift stores where people can go pick up relics from the history, clothing, souvenirs. These coffee shops and bookstores are kind of designed to give people a place to hang out where they're able to converse over coffee and discuss politics, literature, much like what was happening in the 60s.
Oh, yeah, the area was heavily gentrified in the 80s. And so now, of course, ironically, it's one of the most affluent neighborhoods in San Francisco.
Yeah.
I find that kind of funny in a way. But yeah, they're still very proud of the area, the legacy, all the history there. And I mean, why wouldn't you be? Because, all the stuff you just mentioned was some pretty monumental stuff at the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but see, unfortunately, so many people poured into the area. Obviously, it is quickly overcrowded, infrastructure overran, overrunded, and people getting diseases, not only STDs, but sanitary diseases, unsanitary diseases like dysentery, stuff like that. Homeless everywhere, and so it quickly, even the locals realized very quickly that. We got a problem here, right?
Oh, absolutely. George Harrison of the Beatles and his wife Patty swung through Haight Street in Hippie Hill in 1967. And when he was asked, hey, what do you think of this scene, man? The Quiet Beatle, as he was known, said, if it's all like this, then it's really too much. And it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Summer of Love was giving way to fall, which became the dying season. On August 3rd, the body of John Kent Carter, this is August 3rd of 1967. I want to get into a little bit of the crimes that were happening. He is a 25-year-old. He was found in his Parnassus Heights apartment. He was an out-of-work flutist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes me think of Anchorman when she's like, oh, little sissy boys play the flute.
That's a rather unique group of people, right? Flutists.
Well, and I didn't know there were a lot of employed flutists.
Well, if you think about it, every orchestra's got to have some, right?
But there aren't that many orchestras out there. I digress. He went by the nickname Shab, which, okay, cool. And he dealt acid to pay the bills.
Pure LSD was so prevalent in the area.
It was. And a lot of these folks, as you mentioned, they descended upon Haight-Ashbury, and there were not enough jobs. There wasn't enough housing for these folks. Public bathrooms, hygiene. I mean, yeah, it was a little gross, right? But there were a lot of drug dealers there. It was a good way to make fast cash.
Yeah, definitely. You got all these out-of-towners, strangers, not sure about what's going on. Everybody's looking to get, high and, some weed, some LSD, alcohol wasn't as popular, which kind of weirded out the adults. They'd grown up on alcohol, seeing their parents
anyone
drink.
has watched Mad Men.
Yeah.
I mean, they're drinking all the fucking time.
Yeah, it's like, well, I just don't understand these damn long-haired hippie types. So you want to run around naked and have sex with everybody and pass around dysentery.
Now, Billy, I know you're only 4, but go in there and pour Mama vodka on the rocks, right?
Pour Mom 3 fingers on the rocks.
Exactly. Okay, so this flutist, his body is found on August 3rd, 1967. When he was found, he had been stabbed in the chest. His arm was chopped off just above the elbow.
Oh, my God.
A trail of blood showed where he had been dragged from the living room to the bedroom, which was described by the Chronicle as a brightly decorated pad covered in the colorful swirls and sunbursts of psychedelic art. He had a battered Volkswagen van, a handgun, and about $3,000 that he and his girlfriend were saving for a trip to Europe, all missing, along with his arm.
Oh, so his arm's not even at the scene.
No. So his Volkswagen, gun, $3,000, arm missing.
That's very strange.
2 days later, on August the 5th, a police officer named Charles Baker arrested a guy named Eric Dahlstrom for speeding through town in Carter's stolen van. Inside, police found Carter's loaded 9mm, about $2,600 in cash, a bunch of pills, and the missing arm.
Oh, wow.
He had the arm rolled up in a leather chamois-like material. Gross.
Why would you take the arm? I just really weird. Why is the arm cut off?
Well, of course, this police officer's like, yeah, it was a bit of a shock, to see that kind of thing. It's not every day you're expecting to just see a weird piece of fabric, and when you start poking around, there's a fucking arm in it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Right. So Dahlstrom was a 26-year-old daredevil motorcycle racer. These jobs.
Man, these people. Nobody works in retail, it seems.
He had taken a top prize in the Cotati Motorcycle Grand Prix in May, so just a few months before, but things were already going south for him. He told reporters that he had been on an 18-month LSD binge when he killed Carter over some bad acid.
There you go. Senseless violence.
He described Carter's death as violent. He said Carter was convulsing as he went down, and that's why he stabbed him more, maybe a little too much. He had never had a life in his hands before like that.
Yeah, I don't think there's an okay amount of times to stab someone. I think once might be too many.
Dahlstrom couldn't explain why he had chopped off Carter's arm with a butcher knife. His quote was, "The hand is a man's history. I'm a cancer. I'm not a hard person normally." Love that he brings up his sun or his
What does
his
your
astrological sign to,
what does your sign got to do with anything, bud?
because cancers are typically like, sensitive.
Oh, okay. So he's trying to make a valid point.
Yeah.
No, so he's saying he was basically in a drug psychosis, right? Been tripping on acid constantly for 18 months, which is a long time, really strong acid. And he probably doesn't even quite remember exactly how it went down and that stuff,
That's
right?
what it sounds like. But this is a pretty horrific death, and it's happening all right there in the neighborhood. That same day that Carter's body was found, a guy named William Thomas took a ride up to Sausalito with somewhere between $35,000 to $55,000 in cash
Wow.
to buy the makings of a massive batch of LSD. Thomas was a 26-year-old African American who lived in the Mission, which I guess is another kind of area around San Francisco. And he was better known around by his nickname. Everybody's got a nickname. So we had Shab. His nickname was Super Spade.
Okay.
And he would wear a button on his shirt that said Super Spade, faster than a speeding mind.
So he had a custom button? That's pretty sweet.
He had his own button, bro.
Yeah.
He had plans to buy into a restaurant in Marin, California. Marin is what it's called. Marin. It's a very hoity-toity sort of suburb of San Fran.
Yeah, no offense to anyone living there right now.
Well, people who live there know it's a fucking expensive place, man. You living in Marin, you got some money. Ain't no poor folks in Marin. So he's trying to buy this restaurant, and he had hoped that this drug deal would like catapult him, into financial stability to invest into this restaurant.
So
that
it's
was the main goal. So he was not like a regular kind of drug dealer. Like, he was the guy who wanted to do like the one big score and then be done.
Yeah, it's like some trope from a movie. One big score and I'm out.
Exactly. But it did not go the way he had planned. His body was found on August 6th, wrapped in a sleeping bag and dangling off a 300-foot cliff near Point Reyes. He had been shot through the back of the head and stabbed in the heart. Only $15 remained of that giant, what'd you call it, Dylan? A dog knot?
Yeah, it's a dog knot.
Yeah. Of that dog knot he had brought with him to make the score.
The 55,000.
Somewhere between $35,000 and $55,000. Gone. He had $15 left on him.
$15.
$15.
So see, that's unfortunate when you have this kind of drug activity, this kind of overcrowding, it's like when you see the seagulls, in the ocean, and a big shark or something's eating something, they're picking all around the edge. You just have all these people preying on people, opportunistic type of people, but then it's going to be a cash business. And so you're going to have these large amounts of cash floating around, and it's inevitable. You're going to have people that want to rob you, kill you, take your money.
Super Spade was considered like a sort of celebrity in the area in San Francisco. He was known because he had this real, awesome afro. There's an attorney named Patrick Hallinan who recalled that Super Spade was the first guy he had seen with a real, bona fide, authentic afro. And that it was just, amazing. Perfect hair. And he was a really pleasant guy. There was nothing aggressive or nasty about him at all. He was super sweet. People really liked him. Hallinan had defended him because he had been rounded up in a pot raid with some other folks, including a debutante and some other rich kids in December of 1966. Though he was not, like I said, a real drug dealer. He was just kind of hanging out, and it sounds like he got popped in this raid. He was kind of known as having this super smart fashion sense. People just adored him, and he was regularly mentioned in Herb Cahen's Chronicle column, which was called "You Are What You Eat." And it's a column, and he was also, he was in the column. The guy would mention him quite a bit, just hay around town. And then there's a documentary called You Are What You Eat that came out in 68. And it was a sort of documentary, but also music video. Just sort of a very, like avant-garde piece of film that starred Tiny Tim and Timothy Leary.
I feel like I must see this.
So Super Spade was in that. So, I mean, he was kind of like a man about town.
So everybody knows him.
Like, people were digging him.
He stands out. He's sharply dressed.
Yeah, he's groovy.
He's killing it. And he's got, got extra money, Yeah, so he's just killing. Everybody knows who he is.
Yeah, and I believe that Thomas's murder still remains unsolved. He was last seen with two men in a tan car. One was described as a bearded New York hippie that they called Joe, and another one described as a Sausalito hoodlum. But none of these these leads ever panned out. And so his murder, as far as I can tell, is still unsolved.
Well, that's unfortunate for his family.
Yeah. So when Dahlstrom murdered Carter, there were a lot of rumors flying around the Haight that there was an Eastern crime syndicate moving in. This kind of sparked this ensuing panic. Hippies began buying guns, which, that's a bit odd, right? Because they're like peaceful fuckers, but they started buying guns for safety.
Okay.
Because they thought this crime syndicate had moved in.
How about the guys run the gun shops? Like, what the hell is this shit right here? Hey, boy, are you lost? He's like, I need a damn revolver.
So at the time that this was happening, Charles Manson was living just off Haight Street on Cole and was already assembling what he would call the family. And of course, we'll get into that on our second episode. He would take these long drives in his VW bus up to Mendocino, which was on a route that happened to go right past the sea cliff where Thomas's body was dumped.
Let's see. Okay, so now you got Charlie's in San Fran, right? If I may interject. So Charlie was on federal probation for his treasury check schemes, right?
Right.
He had a probation officer, a Mr. Roger Smith. And it's alleged that Smith actually told Charles that he should go to San Fran. It's a really cool scene. He thought he'd, do good out there. And this is his probation officer telling him that. Well, for whatever, if that might not be the reason, but Charles does go to San Fran. Oddly enough, Roger Smith follows him to San Francisco, which I find very strange. And it was also reported that by this point, Manson was his only person that he was overseeing their probation.
Like his only
client, if you will.
Parolee or whatever. Yeah.
Which I also find strange, right?
Well, I find it strange that instead of assigning him to a person who is employed by the Department of Corrections and is a true blue through and through probation officer, we're going to take Charles and assign him to this doctoral candidate at the University of California at Berkeley.
Yep.
And be like, hey, by the way, we know you're a doctor, but we're going to assign you to this fella.
So
it seems odd to me.
Even the fact that a doctor, highly educated doctor, is also a probation officer just does not compute for me. I'm not saying it's impossible. It just seems worlds apart, like you would never mix those two things. And also, it was reported that there was numerous occasions that he should have revoked Manson's probation.
But didn't do it.
For various, petty crimes, getting in trouble, not listening. And obviously, hell, he knew he was strung out on drugs. And no, he never did. And there was even a report that he went to, he even came to the aid of some of the girls later on in court and testified in front of the judge. Oh, they're great. They're good people. You should give them a second chance. Again, I find that very odd, right? So like you said, a doctorate student from Berkeley. And as soon as Roger gets in San Fran, he meets a David Smith. Roger Smith and David Smith, no relation. Now, David Smith has a free clinic, famously has a free clinic set up in the heart of the Haight-Ashbury area to service all the, just whoever.
Which was much needed.
Much needed. And they're servicing, you just walk in there and get help with things like STDs, nutrition, all that stuff. If you're having bad trips, you can get medical care.
Common colds.
Common cold.
Allergic reactions.
Very quickly,
wound care.
Roger Smith begins an amphetamine study out of the same free clinic. Okay, again, fucking weird.
Which is funded by the government.
Funded by the government.
He's given grants to study LSD and methamphetamine.
Yeah. Yeah, and David Smith, the guy who started the clinic, he's over it, did very strange things. Like he financed a house, an old Victorian house, which there's a lot in the area, fixed it up a little bit and made it like basically a crash pad where you could just go chill there. They would give you more drugs. Okay, that's not strange. And also, even a brothel was known to be connected to the clinic. I mean,
as Charles said, that's your commodity to sell.
Well, yeah, I appreciate his entrepreneur spirit on that. Even at one point, assistant to Dr. Smith, Alan Rose, because they kept seeing members of the family, which they weren't known as a family there, but Manson's crew, because they came there all the time. Either some of the girls, Manson himself, they were said to come there multiple times a week, even every other day or so. And so at some point, it's very, very strange. The assistant, Alan Rose, went and stayed with the family for 4 months straight. And reportedly did a shitload of drugs and had all kinds of crazy sex orgy things.
That sounds really fun, but also really kind of gross. And I don't know, there's just too many fluids being exchanged.
It's just strange on so many levels. Why would this person do this?
Because he's just living his best life, Dylan.
Or is he grooming, saying, hey, I think I found the perfect group for some other fucked up experiment we're doing? Because not long into this, Louis Jolly West arrives in San Francisco and comes to the clinic. Now, do you know who Mr. West is?
I've only heard you speak of the Jolly Man.
He meets the Smiths, I'll call Roger and David, and he loves the free clinic setup. West was a CIA psychologist who worked closely with Sidney Gottlieb, who was the actual head of the MK Ultra project for years. Okay, so that's why I was saying this isn't conspiracy theory. These are direct known connections, and I find it very odd. And West quickly arranges secret research projects through the clinic, and these he arranged for them to be funded by the CIA using various medical research funds to kind of mask and launder their money through, so they could hide their involvement in these experiments, multiple experiments. And Manson was reported to have intersected with at least 4 of these projects. I mean, what are you exactly doing at this free clinic? And later confirmed to have participated in at least 2 of them. There's other witnesses who reported Manson having direct conversations with Jolly West for hours at a time at the clinic, going back in the back room or whatever. And I mean, it seems like way more is going on than, hey, here's a free clinic. Even if there is some unethical research being gathered on the drug use and stuff, okay, that wouldn't be the end of the world. I mean, because, a lot of times scientists or doctors, if they are presented with even an unethical situation, see value in the data that could be collected from said situation. I don't think that's necessarily evil. You know what I mean?
Well, it is kind of.
Well, it's unethical at the very least.
What was it, the
Tuskegee Airmen?
Yes.
Oh, when they intentionally gave these black service members syphilis and let them keep it.
Like, that's fucked up, man.
When you could easily treat it.
There comes a point where, ethics you have to include ethics in these conversations.
Well, certainly. So now you got both Smiths, Roger Smith, this doctor/PO officer of Manson, who supposedly pushed Manson to go there, thought it'd be a great place for him to be in the heart. This is like advice you would never get from a regular PO, right? Hey, you should go where they're famous.
You should go where the drugs are.
Where all the drugs and sex orgies are.
Yes.
And just this crazy kind of lawless, overcrowded areas at with
Bang, bang, Wild West. Yeah, exactly.
infrastructure overrun. I mean, that's very odd advice, right? And so now you
and by
got
the way, here's my buddy who headed up this MK Ultra project and has CIA connections. You should like hang out with him, man.
yeah. By the way, here's the guy who worked closely with the guy who developed the MK Ultra project, which had 80 subset projects under it, I believe it was, and 80 institutions and colleges and stuff like that working on it at one time. And maybe ties to Nazi scientists that came over and Operation Paperclip.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, look what it did to Ted Kaczynski.
So here we are in the heart of the hate. This free clinic, weird shit going on, and we have Manson with close ties to this free clinic and the weird shit going on. And they're broke as hell. None of them work regular. They're, dirty hippies, but they always got a pocket full of damn pure LSD, right?
Well, yeah.
It's kind of strange.
They're stealing, tricking.
They're being given the drugs for free.
And being given drugs for free.
By the CIA, once again.
Well, I have another murder to talk about.
Well, let's talk about it.
So after the Summer of Love, this is in 1968, the day after Christmas, Dylan, a woman, 19 years old, named Anne Jimenez, had left her family in Bellingham, Washington for San Francisco only a month earlier. So around Thanksgiving, she'd left her home in Washington, went to San Francisco. She is found dead in her Haight apartment with obscenities written in lipstick on her naked body.
Oh.
Now, I'm going to give you guys a bit of a warning. This is a very fucked up story and does include sexual assault. So if you want to skip ahead or you don't want to finish the episode, I'm not going to blame you. Police and witnesses said Jimenez was the victim of a 2 to 3 hour gang rape at the hands of at least 6 young men and 3 girls who lived in her apartment building.
Jesus.
This was to, quote, teach her a lesson for allegedly stealing her roommate's boots.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes total sense.
This woman was kicked, beaten, and dragged down 2 flights of stairs. She died from a blow to her temple. None of the eyewitnesses intervened. Even while police stood outside during the attack, which the San Francisco Examiner called, quote, as brutal and sadistic as a scene that the city had ever seen, basically. So this is just a terrible situation. There's cops outside of the building, like out in the streets. These witnesses are coming and going, seeing cops out, don't say a thing.
While she's being assaulted over hours.
Like she's upstairs in this apartment with these atrocities, these violent acts being perpetuated, and these folks aren't doing a fucking thing about it.
I couldn't do that. I would have to, at the very least, involve the cops who are literally out front, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you may be scared or whatever to intervene yourself, which I don't know. I think if there's not guns in my face, I think I'm going to find a stick or something and start fucking swinging, and we're going to see what's up. I mean, I just could not stand by while any woman or man was being done like this. I couldn't.
Now get this bullshit. 4 young men were tried for first-degree murder and rape with the death penalty on the table. All 4 were acquitted after defense attorneys deflected blame over who delivered the lethal blow that had killed her. And this is just mind-blowing to me. They said that the evidence indicated she went along with most of this voluntarily.
Okay.
One of the jury foremen said, "It's sick, but it's a sick group of people." Basically saying she had, been part of this, consented to this 3-hour gang rape where they beat the shit out of her and fucking killed her. Well, she was into it.
Shit, that mentality.
Isn't that fucking awful?
Has haunted rape victims the entire time since we've had a justice system for them to be put into to try to get help and justice. And they're always subjected to that mentality from the system.
So this trial was going on the same month that the Manson family would commit its crime against Sharon Tate. And you know, that whole scene, which we'll get into. So this trial was happening at the same time Sharon Tate was murdered.
So I'm going to guess what caught your eye about both these cases is they were high profile. They were sensationalized.
Of course, this case, being so brutal, it got a lot of press coverage at the time. And it shined a light on Haight-Ashbury, where obviously the summer of love had turned dark. Because at first it's like all peace and love, but then you have shit like this going on.
And now it's like the winter of shit.
Yeah.
God, Jesus Lord.
So in 1969, there were 30 killings in the Haight. 4 of them happened on Jimenez's block, and they called this the Terror Terrace.
Oh, God.
So in 1969, 30 killings in this. You described it as being like a 0.3 mile walking
5 square blocks.
Yeah.
That's not that big.
So 30 people killed in 1 year in this area.
Oh, yeah, because due to the overcrowding and all the other things, and crime was rampant, you know, and just everything. I mean, I'm sure the locals were shocked by what they were actually seeing on the corners there right in front of them, right?
As we were discussing the massive amount of media coverage that this case received, instead of discussing the details of the gruesome death, it almost all focused on her appearance and her hippie lifestyle. Reporters referred to her as a fat and lonely misfit who escaped a broken home. Can you imagine today if the media was reporting a victim as a fat and lonely misfit?
No.
They were also talking about how she had previously been put in a boarding home, which I'm assuming is kind of like a foster home type of thing, and that she had been arrested for drug use in the past. So this automatically made her a piece of shit.
Oh yeah, it's a total. It's victim blaming at its best. I mean, they're hitting it all. They're slut shaming her. They're saying because she used drugs before or whatever, she deserves this basically. You know, if she didn't run around with dirty hippies, this wouldn't have happened to her. I mean, they're hitting all the high points on the book of being a piece of shit.
And people who hung out with her said she really was a misfit. She didn't really swing with a good crowd or a bad crowd. Some of the groups liked her, but for the most part, she didn't fit in anywhere. And they were like, if one thing, she was absolutely an honest person and she absolutely didn't take those boots. But her roommate, who happened to be underage at the time, Teresa Sonny Henderson, is the person who initiated the attack as retribution. Her husband at the time, a 19-year-old named Joseph Henderson, was one of the 4 who had been charged with murder, rape, oral copulation, and sodomy.
It don't matter. She took 10 pairs of your little stanky ass boots. No one deserves that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, that reasoning alone just tells you what type of people you're dealing with.
Sonny Henderson testified that she was raring to go for a gangbang over the lost boots, and that she is the one who guided Jimenez upstairs with a hand on her back to get her to this room where they attacked her.
Oh, so the girls whose boots it was all for y'all should gangbang her and fuck her up, basically. Beat her.
So these men took turns beating her, raping her in front of a large crowd that chatted and laughed the whole time. And none of these fuckers reported it to cops. Anyway, I'm just very disgusted by this entire story. And to think that, I mean, I'm not saying Manson's case doesn't deserve to get attention, but you got some fucked up shit like this happening.
Right.
And this is a case that most people probably have never heard of.
I've never heard of either of those cases.
Well, there were 3 of them, but yeah.
Well, I mean, so far I've not heard of the first 2.
It's pretty fucked up, man. Okay, anyway, moving along.
I don't even know what to say. Look, all I have left is, actually, I will say, Very interesting. I have to get this book. Tom O'Neill's 2019 book, Chaos: Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s. And it's a bombshell.
I've got it downloaded.
As far as you do, I have to read it all. It is a bombshell as far as the accusations. He's the one who pointed out all the connections of the CIA to the Free Clinic, Roger Smith, Jolly West, all that shit. And he was even famously told, he claims, by Stephen Kay, a co-prosecutor, told O'Neill at one point, this is before the book's release, I'm pretty sure, because he waited years and years and years to release this. He basically ruined his own career to compile the evidence he presented in this book for over the course of many years. Anyway, Stephen Kay, a co-prosecutor on the original case of the Manson family, told him, O'Neill, that the evidence in Chaos could overturn the original verdicts. Now, how bold of a statement is that?
Whoa.
And that possibly the family could have been linked to 12 other unsolved murders, and just the thought of a retrial was just, horrific as far as the state would be concerned. And yeah.
So you're saying it would make the state look like some shit?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, because at the very his accusations are basically that I think he basically, I have not read the book, but from what I could tell, he thinks it was a MK Ultra project, and it didn't fail. It worked perfectly because we'll get into that in our second part, but the Manson story case was used and pointed towards the entire hippie culture nationwide.
Like we have to shut down.
This is what's
movement.
happening. Yes.
This is where your kids are. This is what your kids are doing.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. That's right.
I mean, it makes sense. And if it was successful, Dylan, I think it makes a lot of sense, all of the chaos that's happening in our country today.
How many stories do we hear of, I can't even talk about what's going on right now because it makes my head swim. I mean, we could literally have an hour-long episode and just talk about 2-hour episode. The crazy shit that's happening back to back to back is for all angles.
Okay, just on a side note of crazy shit that's happening, like a day ago, in our neighborhood, they found a nail pipe bomb, like a nail bomb.
Explosive
the
device.
Same kind that Eric Rudolph used. They found one in an empty apartment building, less than, a mile from us?
Yeah, not even a half mile from
and just
us.
an empty apartment.
Yeah.
And the FBI, the SBI are investigating. But that's fucking scary.
Why is that there? Who put it there?
What were they planning to do with it?
Nobody makes a pipe bomb. I mean, some dumb kid might put one together thinking it's cool. But, I mean, it's just, there's nothing good about that, something like that.
No.
Right?
Right. And you were telling me the, Stonehenge replica in Georgia or something like that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a Stonehenge replica on a smaller scale. Was blown up last night, apparently, in Georgia. And, over a quarter of it totally destroyed. And when I say blown up, and these were big slabs of granite, from what I could tell. One of those was...
The Georgia Guidestones.
Yeah, that's it.
In Elbert County, Georgia. One
of those was reduced to rubble, was how powerful this explosion was. And these things were huge. I mean, they were big slabs of freaking rock.
Well, yeah, I'm checking out a photo, and, there's a little person in comparison to the actual Guidestone.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing towers over.
Yeah, and you can see video right now, if you go online, of it blowing up. Now, apparently there's security footage. I'm like, well, if they got that, don't they have the people walking around setting up a bomb? I mean, what is really going on?
So this is believed to be satanic tablets by far-right conspiracy theorists.
Ah, so they wanted to destroy them in the name of God? Maybe?
Killing in the name of, I don't know. I'm not Rage Against the Machine, bro.
Oh, my God. Okay, so where do we go now? Well, okay, so I'm just going to I'm going to sum up my little history lesson. Beyond the family.
Where are we going, man? I think we should just smoke some bud and listen to like Season of the Witch or something.
Yeah, can we do that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I want to do that. So after, we'll get into detail, the Manson family, what happens. Y'all know that part. But we're going to go over it this week, coming up. But this was essentially the death of the hippie movement. The summer of love comes and goes. All kinds of, shit goes down. It's publicized. It's on in everybody's TV in front of their face.
Dude, it lives rent-free in our heads today.
So you had the crime and drugs. This was the death of the hippie movement.
Manson's been dead like 4 or 5 years now? He died in 2017. Mm-hmm. People still be talking about this motherfucker.
Crimes and drugs rampant. It was the area was literally in ruins after the summer of love, like not just figuratively. Overcrowding, disease, and then obviously you got the Manson murders in '69. There's some other big events that could be linked to the death of this movement. Do you remember this one, Heather? The Altamont Music Festival with the Stones?
The Stones, baby.
Yeah, if you're not familiar with that, Stones had a big festival. They thought it'd be a super cool idea to let Hell's Angels be security because they'd been hanging with them. Okay, cool. Probably not a good idea. Probably not going to be professional. Well, the crowd gets rowdy. The Angels start kicking ass. And a young black man, I do not know his name off the top of my head, was actually shot by one of the Hell's Angels for no reason, basically. And that was a pretty big scandal on the Stones' part, I believe.
Yeah, it definitely was.
Yeah, and then you had the end of the Vietnam War in '75, which was kind of a big reason the hippies felt joined together. They're protesting of that war the entire time. And then in the end, I don't mean any offense by this, but basically the hippies became what eventually was the boomer generation. They grew up, kind of got jobs, good jobs, and bought houses and cars and washing machines and became and actually started benefiting off our capitalist system during a time when you could still have a decent job and go to college for a fair price and all that, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I just want to say that the revolution is over, Lebowski. The bums lost.
Oh, God.
Condolences.
Yeah, you know
Get
what?
a job, sir. The bums will always lose.
I don't think it's that great of a movie. Can I say that? Is that a hot take? I don't think The Big Lebowski is that great. And people just I don't know. You love it.
You have the right to your wrong opinion, dude.
And I know I have a right to the wrong opinion. Is that what you said?
Sure, why not?
I don't think The Big Lebowski is that funny.
Okay.
Okay, so that was our midweek. A little bit of history of the Haight-Ashbury area. A little bit of history of the hippie culture, hippie movement. And, we'll be back, this week for our second part of the Manson family murders?
Someday, fool. I'm actually going to post some photos on Instagram, if you want to check those out, of Haight-Ashbury during this time.
Yeah, there's just shit
Found
everywhere.
A bunch of black and white photos of the bums who lost Dylan, the hippies. And we'll post those if you want to go check them out.
The hippies grew up and became the yuppies.
They became the yuppies.
Interesting. And I must say, I don't know.
Your mom's pretty crunchy grooves.
Yeah.
She didn't sell out.
Yeah, you still got some holdouts out there. But as a generation, I don't know. I'm like, it used to be cool, bro. What happened?
Miss Kathy's not a sellout.
No.
But she did name you Bob Dylan, so there's that.
She did. And she tried to get free concert tickets, but they wouldn't go for it.
But my son's Bob Dylan.
Yeah. All right. So that was a little bit of a history lesson from two people that have ADHD pretty bad, if you couldn't tell.
There's that.
Yup.
Okay.
All right. Let's bring this thing home, honey.
All right. Peace and love.
Peace and love.
Crunchy grooves.
Stay safe.
Okay. Ride that wave.
And we will see you this week.
Tune in, drop out.
For the Mountain Murders, Part 2.
Wish we had some acid.
Of Charles Manson. I don't even know if you can get real acid now.
I think we had some. Anyway, I gotta go. Bye.